Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we're discussing my thoughts on episode 5 of the Doctor Who spin-off series, Class, Bravish Heart. And this episode was all kinds of kick-ass. Picking up from the storyline set up in the previous with these carnivorous flower petals, the Shadowkin King, and April going full-on warrior mode to give Quill a run for her money for all the talking and ass-kicking we've seen Quill doing thus far. It was just awe-inspiring seeing April rise to the challenge, wanting to confront the Shadowkin King and become the leader of the Shadow King, at least temporarily, with so much courage and everything like that. I mean, she's the least likeliest character you might have assumed would be so well formatted to a role such as this. And I have to give accolades and hats off to Sophie Hopkins, who plays April. She did it totally believably. I believed in her courage in the face of such hardship and you know, the goodness and kindness and compassion of her character. And she just was brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant. She was the Ram. If you go back to my first episode discussion video for the first episode of Class, Ram kind of stole the show in that episode, and he had another moment with, you know, the second episode. And I really loved seeing, whereas it was Tanya in episode 3, I believe it was, you know, April was at the top tier in this episode. I also have to give hats off and accolades to the actor who plays April's father. Once again, did he come across as highly sympathetic, and you know, there's a lot of pathos and you know, like emotion in his character, and in his weakness, in his sort of frailty. I just really felt for the man, you know, as portrayed by this particular actor, whose name I'm unaware of as of the time of this recording, but he was just fantastic. I feel like he stole the episode when the portal is opened again, and both Ram's and April's fathers go through to try to get back their children. And that whole confrontational speech he has about, you know, you're not like me, even I hate me, and you're so compassionate, you're so good-hearted, you tried to heal your mother at the first sign of having powers before ever considering coming to this planet, to this realm, whatever it is, the underground or whatever they called it, to try to, you know, destroy the Shadowkin King. Before ever doing any of that, you thought about your mother first, and that is your heart, that is your soul. That is who you really are. That is the truest essence of your being. And it just, I got goosebumps, and I was very, like, almost motivated to tears with that. I mean, I know this guy is such a horrible person. He tried to commit murder-suicide, kill his wife and daughter, driving the car off the freeway, disabling, at least up until this point, you know, April's mother, and changing their lives, you know, so much, so drastically for so long a time. And yet I felt for him so much. It's kind of the comeback kid story where people make mistakes, and this was a horrific one, but at least there is some sort of working toward an amends, which, you know, is going to be held off for now. I mean, April lays down the law, much as she did with the Shadowkin King. Dad will call you if and when we're ready, and you have to respect that. And I like that it was left somewhat amicably for that. Again, the characterization coming to the fore. I loved how, you know, passionate Ram's father was, because of the connectivity we've seen with their characters, as I've touched upon in episode discussion videos previous. It is one of my favorite aspects of this series, and we see that connectivity mirrored between April and her mother. You know, we had it kind of touched upon loosely, and I hope we get a little more into it with Tanya and her mother, with the whole, you know, confronting the death of her father after so many years. And it's just, I love it. I love the connectivity and the interpersonal relationships of these characters. And again, to see April becoming such a badass, to see her father reaching out to her as desperately as he was, but it was also a level of prompting her to remember who she is, you know, rather than caving in a moment of heated just quarrel, you know, wanting to destroy the Shadowkin King, which would have destroyed herself. And I love how Ram is right behind her, you know, when the father says, you always said you weren't going to let life beat you. And Ram is immediately like, yeah, you know, you always do say that. I loved it. I loved that whole interaction, that whole sequence. And of course, this is all interspersed with cutting back and forth between Matthias, Charlie, and Quill, who have this new headmaster of Coal Hill Academy, knowing a hell of a lot more than I can even guess at, where she's coming up with it all. The governors or whatever it is, whatever this outfit is, this unit, I don't know. I like that we're getting clear signs. No, it's nothing to do with unit, if you had that in mind at all. I don't think it's going to be Torchwood either, but it would actually kind of be cool, being that, Torchwood was one of my favorite series, at least for the first 2 seasons, and whatever came next, I don't even remember anymore. I only saw it once. The first 2 seasons of Torchwood were excellent, and this show started on its anniversary, really, so it kind of would be cool if it was like a branching off of Torchwood, or at least getting a Torchwood mention in there. I'm kind of wondering if Torchwood is even still a thing, or maybe if there's a copyright, thing where they can't even mention it. I mean, why always unit and only unit? Surely there are other organizations out there that are aware to certain alien species and cultures and things like that. The Doctor might have mentioned it in passing, maybe not, I don't know. Might have wanted to keep it on the down low, considering Captain Jack's probably out there frolicking with the dudes. But another great aspect of that characterization was Quill, being brought to the brink of madness, and kind of paralleling what, April was going through, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, in that, of course, this headmaster woman wants to use this box of souls to unleash havoc on these flower petals that are trying to consume humanity. We see them at least taking down 2 bodies, 2 people, and I don't know how widespread that will end up having been, but it really got down to the wire where she's pulling the gun on Matthias and saying, people are going to die today one way or the other, no matter how you decide to play this. And Quill's very much about take out the Shadowkin. They're the ones who killed our people. We're the only 2 left because of them. Forget these flowers and everything like that. Forget Earth. Make good on what we lost, And that whole dilemma, that whole back and forth, there was such an intensity about it. And there were a couple of times, though, where, just before April and Ram are going to confront the Shadowkin King, and they stop and they have a nice little chat and they kiss, and the Shadowkin King is like, teenagers, And I was like, yeah, we're about to have this big confrontation. Here's the Shadowkin King. Is he just standing off camera while this is going on, while they're having their little smooch and heart to heart? And then very similarly, with everything with these flower petals and everything like that, let's stand around a room and argue and scream at each other and pull a gun on each other and, whack people over the head who are trying to threaten us and manipulate us into doing things. Yeah, let's stop and just talk. But that's the thing, as the Doctor himself said in the previous series, some things are brought to boil, and really what people just needed to do to begin with was sit down and talk. So it's like really exploring that narrative aspect of being brought to boil on the brink of war, on the brink of self-sacrifice and self-preservation and all these kinds of dilemmas, these moral and sort of philosophical and humanitarian theories and ideas and concepts. And boom, in the end, gratefully, thankfully, Charlie did not have to sacrifice all but 1 soul contained within that box, even though we find out later that he really only would have needed to use 1, because it's like a hive mind, these carnivorous flower petals and all this stuff. And when was she going to reveal that? Not until the 11th hour, as far as Quill's concerned. She's beating up her car, and it was all kinds of badass, and it's not even her car. Taking out her aggression, wrong car. Sorry, lady, but yeah, I mean, this episode was awesome. The series continues to be awesome, and I just have to add as a sort of a footnote, I'm seeing a lot of press about the viewership, the numbers not doing very well for this particular series, and it really is irksome to me. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they pushed back airing it in BBC America until next year, 2017, when Doctor Who comes back, and it's like facepalm times 1,000. What in the hell were they thinking? Who the hell's choice was to make it this way? I don't know. They're idiots. Whoever they are ought to be put to pasture. They ought to be sent packing because they're a frickin' moron. And this show deserves a hell of a lot more attention and viewership. I don't know what was going on with the marketing. I mean, other than people who are very closely knit to Doctor Who fandom circles, I don't know many people outside of that arena who are even familiar with this show. Of course, I haven't had any back and forth apart from like episode 1 in the comments. So, anyone watching this who is a fan of the series, feel free to lay down your thoughts on the show in its entirety, episode by episode, in the comments. I always love having a conversation. Love it or hate it, anything goes, as I always say. And I really don't want to consider this show to end up being not too long for the wind. I really want to see it continue on beyond this first season, and I'm really fearful now that maybe that might not happen, and it's really undeserving. This show deserves to have a bigger following, a bigger viewership, and it just seems like a lot of things were henpecked, in the debut of it to assure that that might not happen. So I guess we'll see, and really excited for the next episode, where it looks like everyone's going to be getting up in everyone else's faces, and emotions and thoughts, and secrets are going to be revealed potentially. It looks kind of, pretty badass once again, and that's been every episode thus far. The minor gripes I've had have been very minor and have been few and far between, and they are completely outweighed by the good of this series and its episodes and its stories and its characters and its actors, its portrayals. And so yeah, bring on the next one. That'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.